Welcome to Re-Educated TV, where we keep you informed. The Mongols conquered all of Asia, including Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Yes, Europe and parts of what we know as Africa is actually Asia, which was divided into territories by the Mongol Empire and previous powers. The Mongols were a very diverse and adaptive people and would stop at nothing to obtain absolute rule. The Mongols bear many names and titles and can be easily misunderstood or misplaced due to the fact that some people only associate the Mongols with China. Now, the Mongols were the Tatars of Tartary or Tartaria, the barbarians of Barbary, the Berbers of Berbery, the Tsars of Russia, the Mongols of Mongolia. They were the Khans, the Sultans, the Dalai Lamas of Tibet. They were the Mansas, like Mansa Musa. Mansa was a title. They were the crown princes and princesses, the Turkish dukes, the Manchus of Manchuria, the Qing dynasty of China. They were the Mughals of India. They were the Shahs of Afghanistan, the Chagatai Khanate, the Shogunates of Japan, the Mamelukes of Egypt and Syria. In Mexico, they were the Capacs and Tupacs of the Aztecs, the Incas of Peru. They conquered Colombia, Mississippi, California, Canada, and other parts of the Americas. Here we have the book, The Historical Researches on the Conquest of Peru, Mexico, Bogota, Natchez, and Talameco in the 13th century by the Mongols, accompanied with elephants. So, the Mongols were said to conquer Peru, Mexico, Bogota, which is Colombia, Natchez, which is today's Mississippi, and Talameco, which is today's Ohio. The Mongols also conquered California, Canada, and other parts of the Americas. We must not forget that the Khazars once ruled the world. They were of Tat, where the words Tatar or Tartary came from, and they were of the Sake, the sacerdotal order. Let's take a look at the Mongols' conquest and how they acquired some of their names and titles. The Mongol Empire had spread over Eurasia, including Eastern Europe, Anatolia, North China, Mongolia, Manchuria, Central Asia, Tibet, and Southwest Asia. There was no place left untouched by the Mongols. Just to give you an idea of how vast the Mongol Empire was, Eurasia consists of Central and Western Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and parts of the Caucasus, primarily in the northern and eastern hemispheres. It spans from the British Isles and the Iberian Peninsula in the west to the Japanese archipelago and the Russian Far East. So, the British Isles is a part of Eurasia, and the British Isles consist of Northern Ireland, England and Wales, and Scotland. And the Iberian Peninsula consists of Spain and Portugal, France, Andorra, and Gibraltar, all ruled by Mongols. And Southwest Asia consists of Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Cyprus, Georgia, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Oman, Palestine, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, and Yemen. So what we know as the Middle East is originally Asia, Southwest Asia. The Mongols also ruled Iran, Northwest Africa, Vietnam, Taiwan, and other territories. The Mongols invaded Kiev, Russia from 1237 to 1240, destroying many cities, wiping out thousands of people. It all started when Genghis Khan, said to be the founder of the Mongol Empire, was said to have sent his son Jachi to conquer the lands of what is now known as Siberia, Central Russia, and Eastern Europe. So, massive armies of Mongol warriors, more than 100,000 men, advanced, and easily defeated the army of the Russian princes. The Mongols, who were led by Batu Khan, invaded Russia, took, ravaged, and burnt Ryazan, Kolomna, Moscow, Vladimir, Tver, and all the major Russian cities. The Mongols also conquered the lands and cities to the south. Kiev, Chernigov, and others were burnt to the ground. The northeastern lands, most notably Tver, Moscow, Vladimir, and Suzan, became the main cities after the invasions. In this portrait, we have a Mongol Russian guard. Take note of his headgear, which are still worn by Russian soldiers today. Nicholas the Tsar of Russia was the last of the Mongol-ruled empire in Russia, when Nicholas and his family, including children, the famous Anastasia and her siblings, were all brutally terminated. Now, Kenia's Yaroslav II of Vladimir was poisoned by Goyuk Khan's wife at the age of 67. Kenia's Mikhail of Tver had his heart ripped out in the capital, and Kenia's Mikhail of Chernigov was executed in the same capital of the Golden Horde for refusing to worship Mongol idols. The Russian people were forced to pay large taxes, and the Russian princes were only allowed to rule by permission of the Khan of the Golden Horde, which was also known as Tartar, Mongol, Ego, or the Yoke. Here we have the depiction of Kenya's Mikhail of Chernigov, a Russian prince. He was terminated for not obeying Turco-Mongol traditions. It was said that Batu Khan had him impaled till he was no more for his refusal of obedience to Khan's shrine. Painting done by Russian painter Smirnov. In 1231, the Mongols began their invasion of Korea. There were several major conflicts, campaigns, and 39 years of fierce fighting and struggle. Worn out and exhausted after decades of fighting, Korea sent its crown prince to the Dadu to swear allegiance to the Uyen dynasty. Kublai Khan accepted and married one of his daughters to the Korean crown prince, and for the following years, Korea existed under the overlordship of the Mongol-ruled Uyen dynasty in China. The two nations amalgamated, as all subsequent Korean kings married Mongol princesses, and the last empress of the Uyen dynasty was a Korean woman. Kublai Khan conquered China in 1279 to 1368. Khan was the first non-Chinese to take over the entire country. He then established the Uyen dynasty. Uyen China was considered the most important part of the Mongol Empire, which stretched from the Caspian Sea to the Korean Peninsula. Kublai Khan created the new capital city of Xanadu or Shandu in the Inner Mongolia. The main center of the Mongol Empire was later moved to the Daidu, present-day Beijing. The Mongols conquered Tibet from 1244 to 1354, and all subsequent Dalai Lamas were Mongols of the Uyen dynasty. The Mongols became Sakya Lama, who was the de jure head of Tibet and the spiritual leaders. In this portrait, you have Thupten Gyatso, the 13th Dalai Lama of Tibet, who was Mongol bred and is clearly Negroid. Thupten Gyatso, the 13th Dalai Lama of Tibet, that was exiled in India for some years before returning to Tibet and gaining independence from China, who was ruled by Britain in the early 1900s. The Mongol invasion of Poland was from 1240 to 1241, culminated in the Battle of Legnica, where the Mongols defeated an alliance which included forces from fragment Poland and their allies, led by Henry II, who was Duke of Silesia at the time. So far, we see that the Mongols ruled most of Asia, which includes Europe and Africa. The Great Khan appointed rulers for his territories under various names and titles, so Tartaria on a whole can be misunderstood easily. Now, the Mongol Empire or Tartaria existed up to the early 1900s, which have shown with Nicholas the Tsar that were all brutally terminated. In this book, the historical researches on the conquest of Peru, Mexico, Bogota, Natchez, and Talameco in the 13th century by the Mongols, accompanied with elephants, and the local agreement of history and tradition with the remains of elephants and mastodontes found in the New World. Now, some of the contents include on quadrupeds supposed extinct, wild elephants in America, Mongols with elephants landing in Peru and California, a violent storm, and more. So we will primarily be looking at Chapter 2, Strangers with Elephants arrive on the coast of Peru, their cruelty and brutality, terror of the natives. First, let's take a look at the introduction. Firstly, it is said that Marco Polo and others knew of the Mongols' vast and extensive empire. It was no secret in their time. The voyagers of Spain already knew of the New World, and their voyage was no accident. The stories of Mongols and Tartary landing on the shores of Peru were passed down for generations by the indigenous people and have been exaggerated and mythified by the local inhabitants, even though the Mongols were larger in size. These stories portray the Mongols as giants. Now, the first emperor and empress of the Inca Empire were said to be Manco Capac and Mama Huaco. This first king's name of the Incas is very suspicious. Remember, all the first kings of the world were representations or reincarnations of Manu. And now we come to find out that the first king of the Incas' name was Manco Capac. Mango is mana in the language of Malabar, and mango is manke or manga in the Tamil language. And I have shown that the Aztecs were of Tamil and Tangut. But what is more immediately interesting is that there were 14 incarnations of Menu, and there were 14 Inca kings before Charles V sat on the Inca throne as the 15th Inca emperor. However, according to the stories, the first emperor and empress of the Inca were Manco Capac and Mama Huaco, who were said to be Mongols or Tartary, whichever you prefer. It was said that they first set foot at the lake Titicaca. They told the indigenous people that they were the children of the sun and moon. Sounds familiar? So the Mongols or Tartary were worshippers of the sun and moon, the lunar solar cycle. So it is said that Mangu or Manke was Genghis Khan's brother. But Genghis Khan is also a mythical figure, whose mother, to which it was said, was penetrated by the sun 3 times, and brought forth or begot 3 sons, Mangu and Genghis being 2 of the 3 sons. Members of this religion believed that Buzungar was the 9th avatar. He was the son of the sun, and Genghis was also the son of the sun, and was considered the 10th avatar among many. So the stories of Genghis and his bloodline is clearly allegorical, but their conquest of the world was no myth or allegory. In fact, the fable of Buzungar being the 9th and the promise of a 10th, a prince was expected or promised to avenge God on mankind for the injustice committed by them on earth, and they believed Genghis Khan to be that prince, which led the Khazars to purge the world, so to speak. Now, this is quite interesting. All this obviously occurred 500 and odd years after the 10th cycle in 600 AD. So the promise of Genghis Khan could possibly have been thought to be the second coming among that sect or class before the Crusaders ended the cycle in 1200 AD. In the conquest of the Americas, this first king of the Incas, called Mango, is of importance. He was said to be a descendant of the sun and moon. His name is spelled Mongo, but some historians spell his name Monco. And as mentioned earlier, the word was also spelled Manga, Manna, and Mangu and Manke, among other dialect variations. There is no doubt that Mongol is Menu or Manu. This child of the sun was first called Mongo Inca. The latter word means prince or emperor, but was also used to designate anyone of the royal blood. The word Kapak was said to have come from the subjects, which is described as meaning splendid or rich in virtue. The wife of Mongo, who was said to also be his sister, was called Kaya, which is said to mean queen or empress. She was also known as Mama Huaka, as the mother of relation and subject. Mama Huaka was said to be the first to have taught the locals to weave cloth, among other things. What is also quite revealing and is surely allegorical is that it is said that Mango Kapak and Mama Huaka first set foot at Lake Titicaca. I have shown that Manu, Menu, and Noah means water, or originally means water. Mango, Mangu, Manke, Manga, Mana, Manko are all dialect variations of Menu or Meru or Noah. The 14 Inca kings were reincarnations of Menu or Noah, or you can say the 13 Inca kings were incarnations of Mango Capac. I have no doubt that Charles V have never met any of the Inca kings in person. Even Atahualpa is in question. Is this a coincidence? I think not. That the same amount of Menus in the East is the same dynasty of kings in the Americas, the same dynasty of kings in Assyria, Syria, the Indus, Europe, and now we see them among the Incas. Watch the video The First Avatar and look out for part 2 of this video. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you soon. Take care.